It's week 3 in the NFL this week. I'm Ben Parsons alongside
Trey Martin.
McLean.
And we're very excited. There's been a lot of action in the last 2 weeks. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it fun, a little bit of controversy here and there. But to start the show off, we're going to send it on over to Devin Gobeil with our injury update.
Thanks, guys, and I'm Devin Gobeil here with this week's injury report. This week was not a good week for tight ends. Let's start out in Cincinnati with Bengals tight end Tyler Eifert. His knee and back are hurt. He wasn't able to practice all week, and he's going to be out for the game. Tight ends need their knees and backs, so there really was no question that he wasn't going to be playing this week. Raiders tight end Jared Cook injured his shoulder last week. He was limited in practice, but he is expected to play. Look to see if the injury affects him, but he will be playing this week. Steelers tight end Jesse James injured his ankle and didn't practice much this week. He was very limited when he did. He practiced only on Thursday. It's very uncertain whether or not he will play. It's going to be a game-time decision. It'll be big if he's out because Big Ben likes to use his tight ends to dump it off. Seahawks tight end Jimmy Graham suffered an ankle injury last week, and it's going to be a game-time decision. It's not looking good. He didn't really practice much this week. If the Seahawks decide just to take the safer route, they're going to sit him. We'll know more on Sunday. There's a lot of questions surrounding him. Redskins tight end Jordan Reed suffered a chest injury. He was limited in practice this week, but he is expected to play, so look for him out there. Panthers tight end Greg Olsen broke his foot during the game last week. He had to get surgery on it. It's going to take 6 to 8 weeks. He's going to be on the IR, so it'll be a little bit before the Panthers are able to take him back, and it's going to be tough because Cam's been struggling early this year in the passing game. We'll see what he does without Greg. Stop me if you've heard this one before, but Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski is hurt again. This time his groin. He was limited in practice and he came out of the game last week, but it seems like that was just a precautionary measure by the Patriots. He's expected to play this week. He said today he feels good, he's ready to go. Cardinals tight end Jermaine Gresham missed last week with a rib injury. He is expected to play this week. Cardinals wide receiver John Brown, though, is going to be out again, or he's expected to be out. He's got a quad injury again this week. He didn't really practice much. Things aren't looking good for him. We'll see how he's feeling next week. Falcons linebacker Vic Beasley has a slight hamstring tear, and he's expected to miss about a month of football. Ravens running back Terrence West had a calf injury last week. It's going to be a game-time decision, but of course that's the London game, so they'll be kicking off at 9:30 in the morning. So it's really hard to get a read beforehand what it's going to be. We'll find out when the game kicks off. Browns wide receiver Corey Coleman broke his hand, and he's going to need surgery on it. They placed him on the IR, and the earliest he can come back is November 12th. Speaking of the Browns, Myles Garrett is closer to coming back. He no longer has to wear the walking boot that he was wearing due to his high ankle sprain. Of course, it'd take a miracle for him to play this week, but they're not ruling out next week. Myles Garrett has said he doesn't want to rush back, so we'll see what it looks like. We'll go week to week. We'll keep updating you. Packers wide receiver Jordy Nelson has a quad injury. Came out of last week's game, but Mike McCarthy has said he expects him to play and that he looks good, so look for him out there. Randall Cobb, on the other hand, has not practiced this week, and an MRI on his chest revealed that he has an injury there that could keep him out. It's a game-time decision, but without practicing, it just depends on how he feels in the morning. Jaguars defensive back Jalen Ramsey had an ankle injury, and he's going to be a game-time decision also. Now, he had this ankle injury last week, was a game-time decision, played 68 of their defensive snaps, so we'll see if he can push through it again this week and play. Vikings quarterback Sam Bradford will not be playing this week. There's a lot of questions surrounding Sam Bradford. They did an MRI on him last week, and he has so much scar tissue in his knee that they couldn't see anything. They have no idea how long he's going to be out. He's going to get a second option on his knee this week. Patriots wide receiver Danny Amendola will be back on the field this week. He passed concussion protocol, so Brady will get one of his targets back. Steelers linebacker T.J. Watt left Sunday's game with a groin injury. His status is uncertain. He said himself that he feels good and he thinks he'll be ready to play. It's a minor injury. But of course, the players are always looking to rush back quicker than maybe the coaches and medical staff are. Titans running back DeMarco Murray suffered a hamstring injury. He hasn't practiced much this week. He's uncertain to play. It doesn't really look good. I'm not expecting him to come in. But of course, anything can happen. Thanks. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Devin. Now that we know who's in, who's out, who's questionable, who's a game-time decision, now we can go to my favorite part of the show and talk about our predictions for the week. Joe went a whopping 4-1 last week and is now tied with me for the lead. And D went a solid 2-3 last week. He's 5-5 overall in the season. That's still very respectable. And this is Trey's first time here.
I'm ready to get started.
I'm ready for you too. The first game we're going to discuss is Atlanta traveling all the way to Detroit to play the high-octane offense of Matthew Stafford and company up there. Who do you think is going to win that one?
Well, I think that the Falcons, everybody dismissed the Super Bowl slump, but I think that the Chicago Bears aren't as good as everybody thought they are. The Packers aren't as good as everybody thought they are. So I think that slump still could be lingering. I wasn't as impressed with them as some people were. So I'm going to take the Lions and Matthew Stafford.
Awesome. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Lions as well. If y'all watched the show last week, I was very high on Matthew Stafford.
Yes, you were.
And they went into New York last week and won by, I think, 14 points or so. And so I think Matthew Stafford has shown that he does deserve that big contract extension that he did receive this past offseason. And I think while the Falcons did play very well, they did slip up a little bit at the end. Maybe, I know Falcons fans don't want to hear this, but maybe a little reminiscent of what almost was the Super Bowl. And so I think that that's going to show again this week, and that the Detroit Lions are going to show that they're for real this year.
That's an interesting pick, guys. I mean, I do think the Lions are very respectable. They're a very good team this year. And Matthew Stafford has proven so far that he's worth all that money. But this has all the makings of being a game where you go into it thinking the Lions are going to dominate or the Lions are going to perform well. But over the last couple of years, when the Lions have those games, they just do not show up. So I think Atlanta is going to finally click on all cylinders and take this one in Detroit to get to 3-0, which I know is not what you want to hear, Joe, being a Panthers fan and all, but I do think they will win this one. The next game we're going to talk about is in Philly, as New York is traveling to the city of brotherly love to play Carson Wentz and those Eagles. Who do you think is going to win this division game, guys?
Well, I'm really high on Carson Wentz. I think he's a fantastic rookie quarterback, or second-year quarterback. His rookie season was great. And the addition of Alshon Jeffrey really improved his play. They got a good win week 1 against the Redskins. I know you're kind of upset about that one.
It's all right.
But, like I said, I'm high on that offense. I think the Giants need to fix their offensive line issues, so I think Philly takes this one.
Ooh, what about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the New York Giants. I do think that Odell Beckham is, for him being fully back for the first time this year, that is going to make a difference in this game, since they haven't really been able, with him out, play to their full potential. And I do like Carson Wentz. I like what he's done this year, but I do think Odell will be that game changer in a very close game.
I agree with you, Joe. I think the Giants are definitely going to win this game. I just don't see the Giants falling to 0-3. I know I said that last week. I didn't see them falling to 0-2, but I think they're really going to click on all cylinders on the offensive side of the ball, and then their defense is still respectable. They haven't been letting teams score that many points on them. So I do think they're going to take this one in a close one in Philly. It's going to be great. I definitely keep your eye on this one if you're just clicking through games on Sunday. Now, the next game we're going to talk about is Seattle, who we've talked about, and they've been struggling so far this year, going all the way to Tennessee to play the Titans. What do you guys think is going to happen in this one?
Well, I think the Seahawks really need to find their identity. They have 0 rushing touchdowns on the year, which is just not like them. Pete Carroll, I think he's on the hot seat right now. They've started off well. I think Tennessee, Marcus Mariota is a great young quarterback, kind of like Carson Wentz. They lost to Marco Murray, but Derrick Henry is a very good RB2 there, so I think he's going to get a lot of good carries, so I'm going to take the Titans.
Cool. What
Yeah,
about you,
I'm
Joe?
taking the Tennessee Titans as well. I just haven't been very impressed with Seattle, and like we've said, just haven't been able to run the ball. Their offensive line isn't quite up to par. And Marcus Mariota, I'm very impressed with what he has done, and I think the Titans are going to go as far as he does, and I think he's in for a really big year. So I'm going to take the Titans in this one.
I do think the Titans are a very good team, and I think they are the favorites to win that division, but I do think that they're going to lose this one. I believe that the Seahawks are going to take this one in a close game, but this just has the makings of the game where you finally see the Seahawks click. You finally see their offense work well together. You see their defense step up, which it has so far this year. The only thing that's missing is that offensive consistency, and I really think this is the week where everybody gets off the Seahawks' backs and are like, okay, cool, they're back. Because, I mean, they tend to struggle at the beginning of the season, and then they get better as the season goes on. Now, the next game we're going to talk about is Sunday night in FedEx Field in D.C., where the Oakland Raiders are coming to town, and the Redskins have struggled heavily in primetime games. Is this the game that Kirk Cousins steps up?
Well, the Redskins lost a very emotional Game 1 against the Eagles. Then they were able to tie it together week 2. So I think Kirk Cousins is finally going to get it done. He deserves it. And the Raiders, while they are 2-0, I think they've started off a little bit slower than people have expected. So I think, the Raiders are making the cross-country trip, which is never good for teams.
Nope.
So I think the Redskins are going to get it done.
Interesting. What about you?
Yeah, I think this is a very big game for Kirk Cousins, but I think just all the offensive weapons that Oakland has with Derek Carr and Marshawn Lynch and Amari Cooper, and all that they do have, I think it's just a little bit too much for the Redskins to handle. And if you want to bring in the factor that the Redskins never win a primetime game, I think that just that's not necessarily a reason why I'm not picking them.
Yeah.
But I just think Oakland is just much more talented.
Yeah, I agree. Oakland is a very talented team, and on their roster they have more talent than the Redskins. But I think this is a statement game for the Redskins. They've been struggling a little bit on offense so far this year. Kirk Cousins hasn't clicked, and he didn't click until the fourth quarter of that Rams game. You finally saw him command a drive. You finally saw him throw a touchdown pass that was a great pass. But I do think the Redskins are going to win this game. It's going to be close. It's going to be a great game. I would definitely stay tuned. It's going to be one of those primetime games you want to watch, like the Rams 49ers of all games. And that was a great game last night. But I do think the Redskins are not going to start 0-2 at home, and I think they're going to take this one. Now, the last game we're going to talk about is the Monday night game out at the University of Phoenix Stadium, where Dallas is traveling to Arizona. Who do you guys think is going to take this one?
Well, the injury to David Johnson was just detrimental to the Arizona Cardinals. They have not looked like their former selves in the past few years. They're just not clicking on offense. The Cowboys, the Broncos are a good team. So I don't think that loss is indicative to the rest of the Cowboys season. I know I picked them 8-8, but I think they're going to get the win against the Cardinals on Monday night.
What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I know a lot of people are down on the Cowboys right now, but I think a big part of their loss last week was that outstanding Denver defense. And I feel like we say this every year, but Denver has one of the best defenses in the league right now. And so I think that combined with that, and especially that the Cardinals don't have David Johnson anymore with his injury, I think Dallas is finally going to get it together, and they're going to come out with a win this Monday.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Arizona's a decent team, but they're not great all around this year. Their defense is okay. Their offense has not been there. Carson Palmer, where have you been? It hasn't seemed like it's been your usual self. I think Dallas is going to take this one rather easily, and they're going to improve to 2-1 on this young season. Now that wraps things up for our pick segment. We're going to send it on over to Matt Bumbaca and Jack Taylor for our fantasy football update.
All right, thanks, guys. Alongside Matt Bumbaca, I'm Jack Taylor, and we're here to talk about your fantasy lineup for the week 3 of the NFL. There's been a lot of different storylines that have occurred in the NFL in the past couple weeks. Even though it's been, it's season just started, there's still a lot of changes you can make to your lineup. First off, for me, I think that coming off of a big game last week, I think that the Ravens defense is looking solid, and I think going up against Jacksonville in London, they're going to have another big game when they play this weekend.
Yep, that's a 9:30 kickoff in Wembley Stadium. I expect that game. It's an early game, and I expect it to be pretty low scoring. That Ravens defense is legit, one of the best defenses in football. They're going to put up a lot of points for your fantasy football team.
Another defense that you can look at starting is, I think, the Carolina Panthers defense. They're looking like their old selves of the 2015 season, going up against the Saints team that they do always
Scary matchup against the Saints, right?
It is.
But the Saints are traveling to Bank of America Stadium.
And they haven't looked hot these past couple weeks. I think that the defense can do, at least that front seven can shut down the flow of the offense enough to kind of to accumulate a good amount of points. They're getting turnovers like they normally do, and I think that against a Brandon Cooks-less, Saints offense, I think that they're going to be able to put up some big points. Staying around that, obviously with the injury of Greg Olsen, I think that any one of those wide receivers might get some more playing time for the Panthers. But also, Ed Dixon is the backup tight end for the Carolina Panthers. And in years past, when Greg hasn't been able to play 1 or 2 games, he has shown that he can be just as much of a playmaker as Greg can be. So I think if he hasn't been picked up yet, or if you have him, which I don't know why you would, but if he hasn't been picked up yet, I'd say pick him up because he's going to be a big impact for this Panther season for the next couple weeks.
And a wide receiver that is on the Carolina Panthers that I believe he's been on the field a ton, been playing all the snaps. Devin Funchess, if he's available in your league, I think you should pick him up and stash him. He's going to have a solid fantasy season, and his fantasy outlook is trending upward as of right now.
Going off of staying with the injuries, there are a lot of tight ends, as we heard from Devin, that are injured in the league right now. Rob Gronkowski is questionable. Jordan Howard's questionable.
As you mentioned, Greg Olsen is hurt.
The Steelers tight end.
Jesse James.
Exactly. I think that's a big one that because that they're out, you could pick up. There's tight ends like O.J. Howard for the Bucs. I think that they're going up against a Bradford-less Vikings team that didn't look good when they were playing without him. So I think that he could be a bit of a sleeper pick to have some sort of impact for the Bucs this week.
Another tight end that I think that you should put into your fantasy lineup is Hunter Henry of the Los Angeles Chargers. He is the second tight end alongside Antonio Gates, but he gets enough volume and enough targets that he's definitely fantasy relevant, and I believe that he has a big game against the Kansas City Chiefs this week.
Another big playmaker that you could see for tight end is the tight end for the Falcons, whose name I actually just
Austin
lost.
Hooper.
Is that okay? That's what it was. He had a big game last week. They are playing the Lions this week, but I think that it's going to be a shootout that game. They have two high-powered offenses.
The Falcons' offense always firing on all cylinders. Julio Jones, Austin Hooper,
exactly.
Muhammad Sanu.
I had
Taylor
I have him,
Gabriel.
but he hasn't contributed as much as I was hoping he would this year. Staying with that game, I think that Golden Tate is a good start for that game because going up against the Falcons secondary, which isn't a weakness per se, but it is one of the areas where they're not the strongest.
No, he's going to work well in that slot, and he's going to have a big bounce-back game coming off not a very hot fantasy play on Monday night against the New York Giants, but he's going to have a big game on Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons.
And who did have a big game for the Lions is their new rookie wide receiver.
Kenny Golladay.
Exactly, thank you.
He had a big week one with 2 touchdowns, and I think that he might have been dropped after last week, but if he's on the waiver wire, you should definitely pick him up. Kenny Golladay is a talent in Detroit. Also, Eric Ebron had a touchdown on Monday night against the New York Giants. Ebron is a solid tight end play, and especially with all these injuries to that tight end position, if he's available, you should definitely pick him up as well.
Exactly. Going off on another matchup, I think that the Titans and Seahawks are playing this week, and the Titans look good against Jacksonville, and the Seahawks, they won, yes, but I think that was as much of a loss as you could have when you win the game. They got ran over by Carlos Hyde, who is a solid fantasy running back, but I think that
had 20 points on Thursday night.
Proving that, even though his team isn't relevant, that he is still a relevant running back when it comes to fantasy. But I think that this week, Derrick Henry at the end of the game last week was showing signs of how prominent he can be, and with DeMarco Murray being questionable to maybe not even playing because of his, I think we said quad injury, I think that you should start Derrick Henry if you have him or pick him up if he hasn't been picked up yet, because I think that I think this week is when he's going to start to transition into becoming the starting back at Tennessee. Nothing against DeMarco Murray, but I think that their impacts have changed as the season has gone, or after this last week or two. So I think that that'll be a big game for him.
Definitely. We're looking for Derrick Henry to get a handful of the touches this week, and hopefully he puts up a big fantasy number for you guys.
Exactly. And then going off the lines of, say, quarterbacks, one that you should start, one that you should pick up if you haven't. If you have him, start Aaron Rodgers after a average game against the Falcons. He's going to be playing the lackluster Bengals and looking to score big. So I think he's going to go off this week as he normally does, even with some injuries with his wide receiver core. He's shown that he can score with pretty much anybody.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, QB1. If you have him, you know you're going to play him, and he's definitely going to put up QB1-like numbers this week. Sticking with the Packers, I think that Ty Montgomery, the PPR monster, running back, wide receiver hybrid, is going to have a huge game. And with the injuries to Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb, he definitely is going to be the vocal point of that offense this week.
Someone else you didn't say, though, that I just thought of as we were talking about it, he's a tight end that you could start or pick up if he hasn't been yet, Martellus Bennett.
Yes.
He's obviously a huge impact at the tight end slot, and now with a couple wide receivers being injured for the Packers, look for him to get a lot of the touches over there.
A nice option for Aaron Rodgers. Yeah.
And then if you haven't picked him up yet, or if he hasn't been picked up, Deshaun Kaiser has shown that he can play and be a big impact for that Cleveland Brown team.
Going up against the Indianapolis Colts this week, Kaiser's looked sharp in his 2 NFL games that he's played in. He did get a little dinged up last week, missed a couple of snaps, but this week he's going up against the Colts, and we think that when you play the Colts, you could definitely have a big game, especially in fantasy.
And then there you go. That's how you could pick him up, is if you have Andrew Luck, drop him. Because he's not going to be impactful for, in my opinion, the rest of the season. So drop him, pick up Deshaun Kaiser. That's a couple 15, 16 points already right there that you're adding up. I'm trying to think of what other games
We have the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants on Sunday.
Odell Beckham will look to go off in one of his, I think it's a season debut, right?
No, he played on Monday night against the Detroit Lions, but only had 4 receptions. And this week, Odell said that he's feeling better, had no setbacks on Monday night, and we're expecting him to have a huge game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Eli's going to be looking for him to make plays, especially because that Giants offense has looked very lackluster the first 2 weeks of the season.
And then last but not least, I do have to apologize because I said Todd Gurley was not going to be that good this season. He has shown as of Thursday that he is on the upswing as a running back, and that he is.
Jack, I told you on week 1 that Todd Gurley's going to have a big fantasy season.
He hurt me last year. He was my second pick. I traded him after week 5. He was just terrible last year, and I guess this year he is on that upswing. The Rams is looking. I mean, I thought it was going to be a low-scoring game on Thursday. Turns out they're both scoring upwards of over 30 points.
Todd Gurley had over 30 fantasy points this week.
That's insane. But I think
3 touchdowns.
So I think that's all from us, and up until next week, and then we'll help you out with your fantasy lineup then. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for that wonderful insight into the fantasy football world. Now we're going to get to one of my other favorite parts of the show, Rapid Fire, where I'm going to just state some questions. You guys are going to give me a quick, easy answer on what you guys think. The first one being, will Mitchell Trubisky get playing time this week?
Yes, and if he doesn't, John Fox should be fired in Chicago.
Ooh.
Yeah, I agree. Mitchell Trubisky, I think he is going to be the long-term answer in Chicago. So,
the Bucs get their first real test at Minnesota. Will they show up?
Yes, Sam Bradford is out for the Vikings. Famous Jameis is the real deal. So I think the Bucs are going to contend for the NFC South this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really high on Tampa Bay this year. I think they are, along with the Panthers and Falcons, definitely going to contend for that division.
Who performs better in the Tank Bowl, like I like to call it? Deshaun Kaiser or Jacoby Brissett?
Definitely Kaiser. There's no saving the Colts, so I'm taking Deshaun Kaiser.
Yeah, and no disrespect to either team, but just with the current situations of both teams, they're not very good.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that with Andrew Luck being out, it's going to have a bigger effect on them, so I'm going to take Kaiser.
Will the Dolphins step up this week and lose to the Jets?
Nope, definitely not. The Jets, like the Colts, I mean, aren't they a team that isn't favored by Vegas to win any of their remaining games? So I think the Dolphins are on the come up. They're going to actually, I think, make some noise with the Patriots in that division. So I'll take the Dolphins.
Yeah, but as I've said multiple times on here, I'm very low on the Jets this year, and I'm sticking to my 0-16 prediction. So
I think the Jets might actually take this one, but that's just me. All right, if you could have one of these two quarterbacks, who would you have? Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers?
Right now, at this moment,
Yeah.
Matt Stafford, because
Wow.
Aaron Rodgers does not have the weapons that he used to have. So career-wise, obviously Aaron Rodgers, but I think if I were to pick a team right now, I'd take Matt Stafford.
yeah, I agree with Trey. If I were to pick one right this second, it would definitely be Matthew Stafford. But if you were to look at both of their careers from their rookie season to right now, you can't go against Aaron Rodgers.
All right, who is more likely to be 0-3, the Giants or the Bengals?
I think definitely the Giants.
Ooh.
The Bengals, while they have been playing bad, they still have been close, been competitive. The Giants just look like a team that's just wandering around right now. So maybe OBJ will solve that, but I'm taking the Giants going 0-3.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Bengals. Like I said earlier, I do think Odell Beckham is going to make the difference in that game this year. And the Bengals just have not been very impressive. Andy Dalton looks like he doesn't know what he's doing, so if we're being honest. But so I definitely think the Bengals are more likely in that case.
And they're playing the Packers, so I pretty much think the Bengals are going to be this one. But will the Skins finally win a primetime game?
Yes, I think Kirk Cousins deserves it. And like I said, the Raiders are going across the country, which never bodes well for teams.
No, not this week.
All right.
Oakland's too good.
Is Dak going to finally reconnect with Dez Bryant this week?
Yes, and they're playing the Cardinals, which I know they have a really good secondary, like Tyrann Mathieu and all those guys. But I think right now the Cowboys are kind of desperate, so they need to go back to their roots.
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, again, the predictions, I think this is the week the Cowboys get it together after last week's tough loss.
Is Trevor Siemian and the Broncos the real deal?
Nope, he has a solid sporting cast, but I think he's an average quarterback. The Broncos are real. Trevor Siemian, I think he's just a system guy. He's not the guy that is just catching all the attention.
I agree. I think that he's just not the quarterback that's going to get it done. I think, again, the defense is going to carry that team once again.
Are the Panthers better than the Falcons?
No, at this point, I would not say that. But they both have the same record, so I think these next 2 weeks are going to be a little bit more foretelling than the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's tough as it is for Panthers fans to admit it. I would say no as well. But again, it's week 3, and who knows, about 3 or 4 weeks from now, it could be completely different.
All right, well, that wraps things up for the NFL preview show this week. I'm Ben Parsons.
I'm Trey Martin.
I'm Jim McLean.
Have a good week and enjoy the football games.